Be me. 34-year-old documentary filmmaker. Spent my 20s making indie films about social issues. Gained recognition for raw, unfiltered approach. No narration, just letting subjects speak for themselves. Built my reputation on authenticity. Won awards at film festivals. Got called brave for tackling difficult topics. Never let ideology shape my storytelling. Always said the camera captures truth. 3 years ago, got approached by a streaming platform. Wanted me to make a documentary series. Topic was the gender pay gap in Hollywood. Perfect fit for my style. Signed a development deal worth more than everything else combined. Research phase began immediately. Spent 6 months interviewing actresses. Famous ones, unknown ones, everyone in between. Collected horror stories of discrimination. Heard about roles lost to less qualified men. Pay disparities that made your head spin. The narrative was forming perfectly. Systemic sexism in the entertainment industry. Women fighting against entrenched male power. Exactly what everyone expected to see. Exactly what the platform wanted to air. Started expanding my interviews. Talked to agents, managers, producers, studio executives, casting directors. Wanted the full picture from all angles. My style demanded comprehensive coverage. First cracks appeared during producer interviews. Female producers kept saying things off script, talking about actresses difficult to work with, showing up late missing rehearsals, demanding rewrites for their characters. Told myself these were exceptions. Internalized misogyny, maybe. Women tearing down other women would make an interesting subplot. Then started interviewing male actors, expecting defensiveness justification. Got something different entirely. Story after story of grinding work schedules, taking any role that paid. No complaints about unfair treatment. One guy in his 40s, character actor working steady for 20 years, told me he made a third of his female co-stars, but he was grateful for the work. Said women got paid more because they drew audiences. Market economics, not discrimination. Filed that away as male perspective. Needed for balance in the documentary. Would contextualize it properly in editing. Kept digging into the data. Requested salary information from studios. Wanted to compare apples to apples. Same roles, same experience, same box office draw. Numbers started telling a different story. Top female stars made comparable to top male stars. Sometimes more when you factored in fewer working days. The gap existed at lower levels, but so did the gap in hours worked. Talked to a labor economist. She explained the research literature. Said pay gap largely disappeared when you controlled for hours. Genres worked in willingness to travel. Negotiation patterns, risk tolerance. She was a woman, by the way. Tenured at a major university. Published extensively on the topic. Kept emphasizing individual choice patterns. Not the systemic oppression I was documenting. Started feeling that familiar unease. The same thing that happened on my last project. When the story you expect meets reality, you find. Pushed forward anyway. Had hundreds of hours of interview footage. Surely could construct the narrative I pitched. Cherry-pick the right quotes, right moments. But that would betray my whole ethos. My reputation was built on not doing that. On letting truth emerge organically. On trusting audiences with complexity. Could not become a propagandist now. Went back through all my footage, watching with fresh eyes, the actresses complaining about discrimination, also mentioned turning down roles, waiting for the right project, prioritizing work-life balance, the male actors working constantly, taking villain roles, thankless supporting parts, doing their own stunts for no extra pay, showing up early, staying late. No complaints, just grind. One interview stood out. Famous actress everyone would recognize. Complained about the gender pay gap. Then mentioned her contract demanded. Private jet travel, 5-star hotels. Personal trainer chef on set. Approval over her co-stars. Shortened shooting schedules. Her male co-star on the same film. Flew commercial, shared a trailer. Worked 16-hour days for months. Made less than her total package. Never occurred to him to complain. The math started clicking differently. Women in Hollywood earned less on average, but also worked fewer hours. Took fewer risks with role selection. Negotiated for lifestyle perks over cash. Turned down projects that required sacrifice. Men ground themselves into dust. Chasing any opportunity. Taking degrading roles for exposure. Working brutal schedules without complaint. Because the alternative was obscurity. Started questioning my original thesis. Was the pay gap really discrimination? Or was it different choices differently valued, different priorities differently weighted? Brought my concerns to the streaming platform. Explained that the documentary was evolving. The story was more complex than expected. Wanted to explore nuance, show both sides. Meeting went badly. Executives got nervous, fidgety. Said the audience expected a certain narrative. Said I was hired to tell a specific story. Asked if I was backing out of our agreement. Explained that I could not fake findings. Could not manufacture a narrative that data did not support. My whole reputation depended on authenticity. They said audiences did not want complexity. They wanted villains and victims clearly labeled. Felt trapped between my integrity and my contract, my reputation and my financial security, what I had promised and what I had found. Asked for more time to figure it out. They gave me 3 months. Suggested I talk to their in-house consultants, people who could help shape the story, translation people who could help me lie. Spent those 3 months in anguish. Re-watching footage, reading research, talking to more economists, more industry insiders, trying desperately to find the discrimination, the systemic oppression that would justify my narrative. Found individual cases, yes. Genuine discrimination, genuine unfairness, but not the industry-wide conspiracy I had pitched. Not the simple story of male villains, female victims. Found something messier, more human. Men and women making different choices. Different values, different priorities. Neither wrong, just different. And those differences showing up in outcomes. Found women choosing family over career advancement. Not because society forced them to, but because they wanted to. Found men sacrificing everything for work. Not because they were privileged, but because they felt they had no other value. The pay gap was real, but it was not what everyone assumed, was not discrimination in any simple sense, was millions of individual choices aggregated, choices that reflected different priorities, different definitions of success and fulfillment. 3 months ended. Had to face the streaming platform. Walked into that meeting knowing my career was at stake. Presented my findings honestly. Explained what the data actually showed. Offered to make a documentary about complexity. About the messy reality of gender and work. About how simple narratives obscure truth. They listened politely, then rejected everything. Said complexity does not sell. Said audiences want righteous anger, not nuance. Said they would find another filmmaker, one who understood the assignment. Lost the biggest contract of my career, but kept my integrity intact. Or so I told myself in the moment. Word got out that I had tanked the project. Industry whispers spread fast. People assumed I had gone problematic, that I was defending sexism, that I had betrayed the cause. Former colleagues stopped returning calls. Film festivals that had celebrated me went quiet. The same people who praised my bravery now questioned my commitment, my principles, my basic decency. Found myself explaining constantly. I am still a feminist, I would say. I just believe in following evidence. But that nuance got lost every time. People heard what they expected to hear. Started getting invited to different events. Conservative media outlets wanted interviews. Wanted me to confirm their narratives. To be their token reformed liberal. To denounce everything I used to believe. Rejected those offers too. Would not become a symbol for either side. Would not let my findings be weaponized by people who understood them no better than my critics. This made everyone angry. Liberals thought I was secretly conservative. Conservatives thought I was still secretly liberal. Neither could accept that I was just. Trying to tell the truth as I found it. Spent a year in professional wilderness, making small projects for no money, doing corporate video work to pay rent, watching my career crumble in slow motion. Finally got approached by a university. They wanted a documentary about campus culture, promised complete editorial freedom. No predetermined narrative, no expected conclusions. Just honest exploration of a complex topic. Accepted gratefully, desperately. Needed work, needed purpose. Needed to prove I could still make films. That mattered, that said something true. Arrived on campus ready to document. Progressive activism safe spaces trigger warnings. The whole contemporary college experience. Expected to find performative excess. Kids playing at revolution. Found something different and more troubling. Young women who genuinely believed they were oppressed. In ways that mystified me. Attending elite universities. With every opportunity imaginable. But convinced the system was rigged against them. Interviewed a student activist. She explained that she felt unsafe constantly, that male students dominated class discussions, that her professors favored masculine perspectives, that she could not succeed in this hostile environment. Then I checked her transcript. 4.0 grade average. President of 2 student organizations. Accepted to a prestigious graduate program. Thriving by every objective measure. The disconnect was staggering. She was succeeding spectacularly, while describing systematic oppression. Could not reconcile her narrative with her reality. Kept interviewing more students. Found the same pattern repeatedly. Young women outperforming young men. In grades, graduation rates, admission to top programs, while insisting they were victims of discrimination. The young men were different, struggling academically, dropping out at higher rates. Diagnosed with attention disorders medicated into compliance, but none of them claimed victimhood. They blamed themselves for their failures. Started researching educational outcomes. Women now earned 60% of college degrees. Dominated graduate programs in most fields. Yet the narrative of female disadvantage persisted, as if reality could not penetrate ideology. Interviewed a women's studies professor. Asked about these statistics. She dismissed them as irrelevant. Said outcomes did not measure true equality. Said invisible structures still privileged men. Could not point to those structures specifically. Asked about the young men struggling. She said they needed to adapt to changing times, that their discomfort was not her concern, that centuries of male dominance justified their decline. Said this with absolute moral certainty. Felt sick listening to her. Not because she was wrong about history, but because she seemed indifferent to present suffering. Young men failing invisibly unremarked upon, while successful young women claimed oppression. The university documentary turned into something else, became a meditation on narrative and reality, on how ideology can blind us to what is right in front of us, how the stories we tell shape what we can see. Streaming platforms rejected it immediately. Too controversial, too challenging, too uncomfortable. Did not fit any existing narrative framework. Could not be marketed to any identified audience. Self-distributed online for free. Expected it to disappear into obscurity. Instead, it went viral in unexpected ways. People sharing it across political lines, saying, finally, someone is telling the truth. Got attacked from all directions simultaneously. Feminists said I was enabling misogyny. Conservatives said I was still too liberal. Academics said I was oversimplifying. Activists said I was silencing marginalized voices. But ordinary people kept watching and sharing, sending messages about their own experiences. Men who felt invisible, unsupported, unvalued. Women who felt pressured to claim victimhood they did not feel. Everyone exhausted by narratives that did not match their lives. Realized I had stumbled onto something important. Not a political position or ideological stance, but a hunger for honesty, complexity. For stories that trusted audiences with truth, even uncomfortable truth, even inconvenient truth. Started getting work again, slowly. Not from major platforms, not from institutions. From individuals who wanted their stories told, without predetermined conclusions, without fitting into expected frameworks. Made a documentary about a men's support group. Guys struggling with depression, isolation, purposelessness. Talking to each other for the first time about pain. Discovering they were not alone in their suffering. Finding community in shared vulnerability. Expected to find toxic masculinity. Found wounded human beings. Trying to figure out how to exist. In a world that seemed to have no place for them. That offered criticism, but never support. One guy in his late 20s. Worked construction, lived alone. Had not talked to another person about his feelings in years. Broke down crying in the support group. Said he did not know men were allowed to do that. The other men held space for him. No judgment, no advice, no fixing. Just presence. Acceptance witness. More emotional intelligence than I expected. More tenderness than the stereotypes allowed. That documentary found an audience, too. People desperate to see men as human. Not as oppressors or problems to be solved, but as people struggling like everyone else, deserving compassion like everyone else. Started getting called a traitor to feminism. By people who had never met me. Never watched my work, never engaged with my arguments. Just knew I was making the wrong kind of films, telling the wrong kind of stories. Also started getting called a feminist hero. By different people who also had not watched my work. Who thought I was on their side. Confirming their beliefs, validating their grievances. Neither group understood what I was actually doing. What I was doing was simple and hard. Following the evidence wherever it led. Trusting audiences with complexity. Refusing to flatten reality into narrative. Refusing to sort people into victims and villains. This made everyone uncomfortable. People want their stories simple. Want to know who to root for who to hate. Want moral clarity, not moral ambiguity. Want villains to punish, not systems to understand. Kept making films anyway. About people whose stories did not fit. About realities that complicated easy narratives. About the gap between what we say we believe and how we actually behave. Made a film about female perpetrators of domestic violence, a topic no one wanted to discuss. Found women who had abused their partners. Found men afraid to report, afraid to leave. found shelters that turned male victims away. The statistics were there in plain sight. Domestic violence was not gendered the way people assumed. Women initiated violence as often as men, in some categories more often. But the narrative of male perpetrator-female victim persisted. Interviewed a man with scars on his face, from a partner who threw things when angry. He had never reported, never sought help. Knew no one would believe him. Knew he would be assumed the aggressor. His story broke something in me. Not my feminism exactly, but my certainty about whose suffering mattered, about who deserved compassion and support, about who the real victims were. The film got me labeled definitively problematic, removed from consideration for grants, fellowships, awards, blacklisted from the festivals that launched my career. My old allies became my loudest critics, accused me of endangering women by telling this story. But the men who watched it sent different messages. "Thank you for seeing us," they said. "Thank you for saying our pain matters too. Thank you for not treating us like the enemy. Thank you for your courage." Courage was not what it felt like. Felt more like compulsion. Could not stop seeing what I was seeing. Could not unsee it to make my life easier. Could not pretend reality matched the narrative. The feminist filmmaker who documented discrimination had become someone else entirely. Someone who documented complexity and ambiguity. Someone who questioned comfortable assumptions. Someone who followed evidence wherever it led. This was not the career I planned, not the identity I cultivated, not the reputation I built for 20 years, but it was honest. And honesty was all I had left. Realized the deepest irony of my situation. Had become a better feminist by complicating feminism, by insisting women were complex, not just victims, by insisting men were human, not just oppressors, by refusing simple narratives that served political goals. Real feminism meant trusting women with truth, even uncomfortable truth, even inconvenient truth. Meant respecting women enough to challenge them, not coddling them with flattering narratives, not treating them like children who needed protection from reality. Real feminism meant caring about men too, because men and women live together in this world, because harming men ultimately harmed women, because zero-sum gender war helped no one, except those who profited from division. Arrived at these conclusions through my work, not through ideology or theory, through hundreds of hours of interviews, through stories that did not fit the framework, through human beings who defied easy categorization. My latest project is almost complete, a documentary about feminism itself, about how it evolved and calcified, about what it promised and what it became, about the gap between its rhetoric and its results. Interviewed older feminists who fought real battles, who faced real discrimination, real barriers, who opened doors that had been sealed for centuries. They looked at contemporary feminism with confusion, could not recognize what it had become. One woman in her 70s marched for equal pay in the 60s, helped write legislation that changed everything, watched young women claim victim status today, and felt her legacy being twisted into something unrecognizable. She told me feminism was about strength, about proving women could do anything, about demanding respect, not requesting protection, about taking responsibility, not claiming perpetual grievance, about building up, not tearing down. The young feminists I interviewed disagreed. Feminism was about dismantling systems of oppression, centering marginalized voices, calling out problematic behavior, creating safe spaces free from harm. The generational divide was vast and unbridgeable. Two completely different movements sharing a name. One focused on capability and achievement. one focused on vulnerability and protection, one liberating, one infantilizing. The documentary will make everyone angry, will confirm nothing, validate no one, will ask uncomfortable questions, expect audiences to think for themselves, to tolerate ambiguity, to embrace complexity. This has become my life, my work, my purpose. Making films that no one commissions, telling stories that no platform wants, trusting audiences that institutions have written off, believing people can handle truth, looking back at the Hollywood pay gap project, the one that started my transformation, grateful the streaming platform rejected my compromise, grateful they forced me to choose between comfortable lies and uncomfortable truth, chose truth and lost almost everything: my contracts, my reputation, my community, my sense of myself as a good feminist, my certainty about victims and villains, my easy narratives and simple moralities, gained something else in exchange, hard to name, hard to measure, something like integrity maybe, something like authenticity actually, something like the thing I always claimed to value. Sit in my small editing room now, surrounded by footage that will anger people, footage that complicates what they want to believe, footage that shows reality as I found it, not reality as anyone wanted it to be. No, this film will cost me too. More friendships, more opportunities, more respect. But cannot make any other kind of film, cannot tell any other kind of story, cannot be any other kind of filmmaker. The documentary artist who set out to expose sexism wound up exposing something else entirely: the gap between narrative and truth, the hunger for simple stories, and the cost of telling complex ones. This is my confession and my manifesto, my explanation and my accusation, my apology to no one and my defense of nothing. Just the story of how I got here, following evidence wherever it led. Turns out the truth will not set you free, not in any comfortable sense, will make you unemployable and friendless, will strip away your easy certainties, will leave you alone with what you actually found, but it will also make you honest. In a world desperate for honesty, make you useful to people hungry for truth. Make you the filmmaker you always claimed to be, the one who lets the camera capture reality. Be me. 34 years old when I started. 39 years old now and still working. Still making films no one wants. Still trusting audiences with complexity. Still following evidence wherever it leads. Even when it leads away from everything I believed. Even when it costs me everything I built. Even when the truth is not what anyone wants. This is what feminist filmmaking looks like. When you actually believe women can handle truth. When you actually respect audiences' intelligence. When you actually follow your own principles, instead of just performing them for approval. It looks like loneliness and professional exile. Like being misunderstood from all directions, like watching your reputation burn, while holding a camera steady, documenting the flames.